This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
It's Golden Sense in full flight for the wire over flashback, and Golden Sense have won the Santa Ana Derby.
Ford have won the Kentucky Derby. First of the game. Will take charge is surging, and it's a photo finish. It's too close to call.
And Animal Kingdom wins the Dubai World Cup.
Macho Man!
Broadcasting live from the Capital OTB studios, this is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America on this Monday morning. We kick off post-Derby action. It is the Monday after Oaks Derby weekend. Hopefully you all cashed some tickets and enjoyed the weekend. I was not so big on cashing tickets, but I enjoyed the weekend. Cashed a few smaller ones, and I would have had the Derby triple except for Commanding Curve. I should know better than to doubt our friends at West Point Thoroughbreds, but you can only go so deep, and Commanding Curve was clearly a horse that scared me a little bit, but I didn't put it in the mix. Shame on me, and so I missed out on the Derby. Had late pick 3. I'm trying to think if it was the one with the Derby in the middle. I think it was, because it was a short price. It was Wisedan, California Chrome, and then I had the next horse. So there was a little short pick 3 there. And I should mention I had a couple of tickets on California Chrome, and I think it was Pool 2. It might have been Pool 3 at 32-1, the future pool. So I made a little juice there. But overall, betting-wise, as they say, a little slow for me on Derby Day. Hopefully you all cash some tickets. I'm Seth Merrill. Thanks for joining us this morning. Coming up a little later on will be Mike Penna from the Horse Racing Radio Network. They were down at Churchill Downs for Oaks and Derby, so we'll talk a little bit of the stakes action from a weekend down at Churchill with Mike. And coming up a little later on, Teresa Gennaro, Brooklyn Backstretch, Forbes.com, and a number of other publications. You see her work very often in various places. She was also down at Churchill Downs over the weekend, so we'll get some thoughts and impressions from Teresa as well. All of that coming up a little bit later on. Just touching on some of the news from the past couple of days. Touched on this yesterday on the Handicappers Report. Jeff Carl had mentioned the spill in the last race at Churchill on Derby Day. John Court went down, and John Court, it has been reported, suffered a broken hand. Fellow jockey Jose Ortiz just emerged body sore from that. John Court's agent said it was a clean break, and the doctors haven't estimated how much time he'll miss. But he says hopefully it won't be long. Ortiz was on the flight home, according to a Racing Form article from yesterday, on a flight home on Sunday and expected to take off his mounts yesterday at Belmont Park, but be back in action on Wednesday. So Ortiz came out of it, a little knocked up, but hopefully back on track on Wednesday. John Court, broken hand, and unknown when he'll return. We'll hope for the best and hope he gets back sooner rather than later. Also coming out of the weekend, it's been an interesting discussion now for a while, really since the Eclipse Awards, when the Wisedan camp kind of threw out there that maybe they'd go in a little bit of a different direction in 2014, try some dirt stakes. I think with 2 Horse of the Year trophies in the bank, folks are kind of waiting to see if Wisedan does move off the beaten path a little bit this year and try some dirt stakes races and a little bit of a change-up as far as the company is concerned, and Wisedan certainly has raced well on dirt in the past. Well, the Wisedan camp comes out of the weekend win in the Woodford Reserve, saying that according to Charlie Lopresti, his inclination is to wait until Saratoga before returning him to the races, and the 4-star Dave Grade 2 race that he raced in last year would be the most likely target. The Grade 3 Stephen Foster on the Grade 1 Stephen Foster on the dirt at Churchill on June 14th, however, is also being considered. So we'll see what happens. I would think they would announce that, I won't say right away, but I think we would hear well before this June 14th race. I would expect, and they'll start to make some thoughts and plans for the next start. But again, Charlie Lepresti saying he'd prefer Saratoga and the 4-star Dave to the Grade 1 Stephen Foster on the dirt. Wise Dan did come out of the race on the weekend with a 94 Beyer speed figure, and that was the first time he hadn't run a 100 Beyer speed figure since the fall of 2011. So there was certainly some thoughts that maybe Wise Dan had lost a step. If you watched Loose on the Lead yesterday, my partner Steve Bick was coming back from Louisville. He'd been down there for a couple of weeks and had spent some time with Charlie Lepresti. Charlie thinks the horse is doing better than ever, however. So we'll see. It was a close finish. The Beyer figure wasn't spectacular by any means. The connections are now thinking where they will go next, and it seems like maybe they will follow a similar path to what they have. But two-time Horse of the Year, just got to be happy we have him back and we're able to watch him. And we'll talk a little bit more about that race, in fact, as we get into the show with the guests also. New York-based horses that came out of the Kentucky Derby, not expected to be moving on to the Preakness. Trainer Jimmy Jerkins says Wicked Strong came out of it with a scrape on the hock, but otherwise relatively unscathed. Jerkins was a little concerned about some of the traffic Wicked Strong ran into regarding the Preakness. Jerkins says it doesn't seem like the right thing to do. Who knows? We might do something when we get back home to change my mind. So not firm, but it looks like at this point Jerkins leaning against the Preakness for Wicked Strong. Trainer Rick Violet said Samrat put in a typical Samrat performance. He ran his eyeballs out. Violet said he would discuss the Preakness, but, quote from Violet, I would lean towards not running. So again, not set in stone, but it looks like Samrat probably out. Gary Contessa said Uncle Si would likely drop back into an allowance race for his next start. So 3 New York runners, not likely for the Preakness. Not set in stone for at least a couple of them, but not likely to be moving on to the Preakness. Also, more of the numbers from Derby day and week betting. The Derby itself took a little incremental hit. The Derby card went up a little bit. Derby week betting was down. So it was kind of a mixed bag. None of the numbers were super significant one way or the other. And also some of them match up with field size and whatnot. As I say, Derby itself was down. It was down 0.8%, so I mean, a smidge, and the whole day was up 1 point something, I think. So again, it was kind of mixed results, but basically it stayed mainly flat. The numbers, as they did move, were not super significant. Now, taking a look at, talked about the New York runners that will not be heading to the Derby. Let's talk about some horses that will be going. California Chrome, of course, with the Triple Crown on the line. His connections are expected to accept the invitation, so to speak. But the new shooters out there. Social Inclusion, which to me, this becomes dicey. Social Inclusion was on the outside looking in as far as Derby points. He didn't make it into the race. Was subsequently entered into the Sir Bear on Saturday at Gulfstream Park. It was a $75,000 stake race that Social Inclusion looked to have the field over a barrel perhaps, but scratched out of that with a little bit of a ding. So Social Inclusion now still headed to the Preakness, but comes in missing with the race they wanted to get in. Now they're training up. Boy, these big events, when horses kind of go off their schedule, I just get a little bit dicey about it. But Social Inclusion, certainly a very, very talented horse. Kid Cruise for Linda Rice, who has been so exciting in those 2 most recent starts down in Maryland, will be headed there. Illinois Derby winner Dynamic Impact. Commanding Curve for our friends at West Point. Dallas Stewart called his position 50-50 on moving forward to the Preakness. Right on Curlin is likely to go. Ring Weekend. So our friends at West Point likely will have a horse in one way or the other. Bayern, also Pablo Del Monte. And it has pretty emphatically been stated even though coming out of the weekend, Untappable out of the Oaks with a buyer figure that was significantly better than the winner of the Kentucky Derby. Some folks thinking, hey, maybe Untappable is the best 3-year-old overall. Untappable, however, will not be going to the Preakness. As I say, Asmussen has stated pretty emphatically that's not going to be the game plan. But in an article Claire Novak wrote for the Blood Horse, Asmussen is quoted as saying, Untappable probably at some point this year will take on male rivals. Asmussen says, I think not overdoing it now and the talent she has, I sure hope she would face the boys at some point. So it looks like someplace in the future we have a shot at seeing Untappable step up and race against the males sometime, but not going to be the Preakness. Some more information coming out of the Kentucky Derby weekend. I did want to mention, and I mentioned earlier on the Handicappers Report, you can catch it, I have it linked over on Equidaily, but in the Washington Post and most likely in the Racing Form too, because most of Andy Byer's work from the Washington Post also goes over and gets picked up in the Daily Racing Form. Nice, interesting recap of the Kentucky Derby and looking at the performance by California Chrome. And Byer opens up his article by saying, in almost every respect but one, California Chrome's victory in the Kentucky Derby was satisfying and heartwarming, a triumph for the little guy and the fans, and the media always relish. That said, he then goes on to talk a little bit about the fact that the race was kind of slow, 2 minutes, 3.66 seconds, slowest over a track labeled fast since 1974. Byer then says this slow time is not merely an indication of the current crop of 3-year-olds being subpar. It can be seen as an indictment of the modern American thoroughbred. And the article kind of goes along those lines. Slowness of the Derby, he says, creates an intriguing storyline for the Triple Crown Series. The most impressive 3-year-old at Churchill Downs was neither California Chrome nor any of his 18 rivals in the Derby. It was the filly Untappable. And again, this is Andy Byer. Goes on to note that California Chrome seemed to be making up, seemed to be pulling away in the stretch. Byer says that was an illusion. California Chrome wasn't accelerating. His rivals were fading. The winner covered the final quarter in a slow 26.21. Crossed the finish line in a time that translated to a 97 Byer. And then Byer notes down the page, Untappable, a 107. So California Chrome gets a 97, Untappable gets a 107, and then Byer adds on her effort, Untappable's effort in the Oaks, similar to the Oaks victory of the great Rachel Alexandra, who went on to be voted Horse of the Year in 2009. So again, Andy Byer, nice recap of the Kentucky Derby, where he tips his cap to the storyline and to California Chrome and to the connections, but notes just on the bare numbers that maybe there are some question marks. Again, not just for this horse in the crop, but maybe for racing in general right now. Although, if we're indicting the entire thoroughbred industry, then you can also, I guess, say that, gee, Untappable was certainly pretty impressive because she was born the same year as California Chrome, right out of the same breeding industry. So maybe there's a little dichotomy there. But again, that Byer article available on the Washington Post. You can pick it up. I linked to it on Equidaily. And as I say, I'm relatively certain it will be on the Racing Forum site as well. All right, we're going to head to our first break. Before we do, I want to touch on Classics weekend, obviously in the United States. It was also Classics weekend in England as well. We had a couple of classics for the females and the males, just as we did here in the United States with the Oaks and the Derby. Well, over in Great Britain, they started out their series of classics for the males and females. Yesterday, it was the 1,000 guineas at Newmarket. The winner was Miss France. I believe it was trainer Andre Fab's first win in the 1,000 guineas. Miss France came in with 4 career starts, couple of wins going back to September and August of last year. Her first start of this season had been a 6th place finish over in France in a Grade 3 stakes race. So she went off at 7-1, but Andre Fab gets it done in yesterday's 1,000 guineas on the 3-year-old filly side, winning that mile classic at Newmarket. But as we go to the break, we're going to watch Saturday's 2,000 guineas. Again, that kicks off their classic series over in England. The 2,000 Guineas is a 1 mile race at Newmarket. That's followed up by the 1 1/2 mile Epsom Derby at Epsom, and then later in the year to complete what is essentially their Triple Crown. This race has kind of fallen out of favor, and so Triple Crowns aren't really sitting out there to be had now, even if horses capture the first two legs, because, as I say, the St. Ledger at 1 3/4 miles at Doncaster later in the year just has kind of fallen out of favor. But those are their 3 classics making up their Triple Crown. Saturday was that 2,000 Guineas, the first step. We're going to watch the race here, and I pulled it up for a couple of reasons, just because it is a classic from Great Britain and interesting to watch as our classic season gets underway. It will be the number 8 Night of Thunder getting it done at 40 to 1. This is a horse, the price is a little bit surprising, because this horse, like a lot of these horses, we talk about how lightly raced our horses are going into the Derby right now. You look down the PPs of this 2,000 Guineas, and the vast majorities are 3 starts, maybe 4 starts coming into it. That is the case with the winner, Night of Thunder. 3 career starts, a couple of wins last October, and a second-place finish in a Grade 3 earlier in April to start off the 2014 season. So this was a horse going out, couple of wins and a second-place finish in 3 career starts. So the 40 to 1 may be a little bit of a overlay there, but we will watch the run here. And as I say, I pulled it up. A, it's a classic. B, it's interesting because it's essentially a straightaway mile race. And as we watch it unfold, because there's no turn, it doesn't really matter which rail you go to, so the field splits. And you can hear the announcer saying it's kind of hard to judge which pack is ahead. So you'll see that both of the fields split, and then as they come down to the wire, the eventual winner, Night of Thunder, breaks out of one pack and kind of goes across to the near side, where he eventually gets up to win the race just in the shadow of the wire. So it's a fun race. It is the, as I say, first step on their Triple Crown. Number 5, Kingman, was the favorite in here for John Gosden. He will run second. Number 1, Australia, who Aidan O'Brien touted as maybe one of the best horses he's trained, will run third. So Kingman and Australia were taking a lot of the action. They'll run second or third. But we'll take a look here as we go to the break and watch number 8, Night of Thunder, get it done. Again, in that really unique straightaway mile 2,000 Guineas from Saturday. That'll bring us up to the break, and when we come back, we'll talk American Classics with Mike Penna right after this.
one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today.
The Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back. That's right. The 2014 Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back, and it's your chance to win thousands in cash and prizes, and a seat at the 2015 Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas. This month's contest is the Triple Threat on May 10th. So sign up today, online at CapitalOTB.com, or stop in at the Clubhouse Racebook.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. With a newly designed and engineered internet wagering platform, enhanced video streaming, additional funding options, and 3 new individual wagering opportunities, CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. Combine that with our all-new mobile website. You have 2 of the most powerful, innovative, and advanced wagering platforms available today. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Hey, race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook and get in the game. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, fantastic food and drinks, and amazing Vegas-style atmosphere with seating for nearly 900 of your closest friends. Conveniently located at 711 Central Avenue, right off Exit 5 of I-90 in Albany, the Clubhouse Racebook is the better choice.
I'm Anthony Mormino. Join me weekdays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the day in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekdays at 9, only on the OTB TV network.
This is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Monday morning. Happy to be joined now by Mike Penna of the Horse Racing Radio Network. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, Seth. Good morning.
Happy to have you on board. We talked a little bit during the break, but tell the viewers you were down in Louisville at Churchill Downs with the Horse Racing Radio Network. How'd the weekend go?
Yeah, it was an amazing week. We actually started our coverage the Tuesday evening before the Derby with the Derby Trainers Dinner and went all the way through. The weekend was just absolutely outstanding. From a weather perspective, we really lucked out. I always say that on weekends like that Mother Nature must be a racing fan because she really blessed us with some great weather this past weekend. The fans turned out in near record numbers, the second largest Derby crowd in history, and they just missed the record by a few hundred people. It was a great atmosphere and a wonderful race and just a great time at Churchill.
And I'm asking everybody also, you made your first visit to Churchill Downs since the big television screen. How impressive is that?
It is unbelievably impressive. It just it adds so much, and you know, it used to be in past years where if you were in the infield among a party in the infield, you couldn't see a thing. You never saw a horse all day long. That has now changed because you don't miss anything. They put the celebrity interviews up on the big board. They put all the odds up on the big board. All of the races are live and replayed on the big board. So it's really incredible. It is so clear. It's the largest big screen, I believe, in the world, certainly here in the United States, and it really is something to see.
Yeah, the pictures and what I've seen of it on television certainly look impressive, but I'm just wondering what it's like to be there live and in person, and everybody I've talked to over the past couple of days has said exactly what you have said. Very impressive. All right. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the racing. Let's get right into it and go to the highlight of the weekend, the Kentucky Derby. Got the stretch run here. We're going to watch number 5, California Chrome, get it done. Number 17, fourth longest price on the board, Commanding Curve, run second. I thought Danza ran well to run third, the number 4 horse, despite getting knocked around a little bit in the home stretch the first time. Similar with number 20, Wicked Strong, to run fourth. And Mike, like you, I'm on television, you're on the radio. We all like these stories that wind up, being good for the game. Art Sherman and California Chrome and his connections and the breeding of this horse just add a nice story to this. What was your takeaway from the Kentucky Derby?
Yeah, you couldn't be happier for the connections. We hear so much about the blue bloods in the sport of thoroughbred racing, and this is a game that, as the axiom goes, is for the sport of kings. And this couldn't be any further from the truth with this story of California Chrome. And, here's a horse that came about because his owner, Steve Coburn, was looking for a tax write-off when he started looking for the mare, and her asking price was $2,500. The connections of the mare who had her at the time decided they wanted to run her one more time. They ran her for an $8,000 maiden claiming race. She wins that race, and all of a sudden the asking price went from $2,500 to $8,000. Coburn couldn't afford to go to $8,000. He didn't have the money, so he brought in his partner, Mr. Perry, and he ends up, getting half of the horse, and the mare is bred to Lucky Pulpit, and all of a sudden we have California Chrome. So it's an incredible story. You touched on Art Sherman, 77 years old, oldest trainer ever to win the Derby, comes back for the first time since 1955 when he was there as the exercise rider for another Calbred winner, Swaps. So many great storylines. But the performance, I thought, was outstanding. It reminded me so much of what I saw when we were at the Santa Anita Derby, and he pulled away so effortlessly that day. It's very much the same thing. Did he get the perfect trip? He had a great position just off the early pace setters. But good horses will do that. They'll let you put him in those positions. And when he said go, he just glided away from this field, and he won gear down just the way he did at Santa Anita. Very, very impressive.
Yeah, he is clearly the top of the 3-year-old class now. There's no question about it. Let me ask you this. Looking at the race, I think we all anticipated probably for the better part of 6 weeks there would be a blazing pace. There were maybe some defections along the way of those 6 weeks that took a little of the sting out of that. But still, I think we were probably expecting a little more than that 47. What were your thoughts on the early pace?
I was shocked. I did not expect it to be that slow. We had talked about this for weeks leading into it, that there was a lot of speed. The winner of the Derby was probably going to come from off the pace, and it just never materialized. I think part of that was the fact that Wildcat Red never got out, and he never was even close to the lead. He figured, at least in my opinion, to be one of those ones that would ensure a hot early pace, even though his trainer, Jose Garofalo, told us during the week that they were going to try a different strategy and let him sit just off the pace. I think that he's a free-running horse, and his cruising speed would have taken him right to the front. That might have pressured the other horses to go a little bit quicker. But, yeah, it never really did materialize the way we thought. Very surprising.
And that said, it makes the performance as a Commanding Curve and Danza all that more significant. So beyond California Chrome, what were your takeaway on some of the horses behind?
Yeah, I used Commanding Curve. I think I told you this as we were coming on to the interview here before we got rolling, that Commanding Curve was a horse I had in the mix. Now, in fairness, the way I bet the race was I had a 6-horse exacta box because I thought it was so wide open, and Commanding Curve was one of those horses that he just seemed to me he was a horse that could clunk in there somewhere because he's a grinder, and he just keeps going and going, and he has that late pace that made him very dangerous. And he got a clean run on the outside under Sean Bridgmohan, who did a nice job of getting him in the clear through the stretch to be able to finish the way he did. Danza, you mentioned the trouble that he had. Here's a horse that I wasn't really a believer in going into the Derby. Even though he had trained the best of any horse at Churchill Downs this week, he still was a horse that I had a hard time buying into because, let's face it, he was 41-1 when he wins the Arkansas Derby, and all of a sudden we're talking about him being, third choice in the Kentucky Derby 3 weeks later? It was kind of hard to swallow, but he ran a tremendous race, and he's a very, very talented horse.
And let's talk about some of the disappointments. I used Intense Holiday on top of the stretch. I thought he was right in good position, and at any point up to the 8th pole, I thought, well, he might get into another gear and do something, but at the 8th pole, he kind of threw out the anchor. Candy Boy, of course, Gary Stevens felt he got some traffic trouble going into the first turn, certainly. Wildcat Red, as you mentioned, just never really seemed to get into the game at all, given we were expecting him to maybe have some early pace. What were some of your disappointments coming out of the race?
Yeah, Candy Boy certainly had those issues around the first turn. I know Gary was pretty upset after the race. He never felt like he had the opportunity to let his horse get into that position where he could fire his best shot. So I think we'll hear more from Candy Boy up the road. A lot of people were thinking that he was a horse that, even if he wasn't good enough to win, he could certainly be in the top 3 because of the way he was handling the surface at Churchill throughout the week. Intense Holiday, again, with a clean run and we talk about this a lot, Seth. It seems like every year when we talk about the Derby the day or 2 days afterwards, we're talking about horses that never got to run their race. And how many times do we say it? The best horse doesn't always win the Kentucky Derby, because with 19 or 20 horses in the race, you need so much luck. Everything has to go your way. For California Chrome, it just did. I mean, he worked out the perfect trip, and he kept him, Victor Espinoza kept him in the clear, and that was the key to victory.
Absolutely. All right, and now it's on to Pimlico and the Preakness, and we'll see what can happen there. Maybe we'll have a Triple Crown on the line in a couple of weeks, and certainly that would add some more excitement to the story. But I'll now go back to Friday and talk about, and Andy Beyer alluded to this in his column, maybe the best 3-year-old of the weekend in the Kentucky Oaks. We're going to watch the stretch run, see number 13, Untappable, get it done over the Pletcher horse, number 11, My Miss Sophia, and Untappable, absolutely impressive, and validating those races down at the fairgrounds earlier this year. But clearly, she is a very, very talented filly, and as has been stated by Steve Asmussen, I believe it was in the Blood Horse article, one of the articles I just looked at the top of the show, she expects Untappable to face the boys sometime this year, but it's not going to be in the Preakness. But again, I think a lot of people coming out of the weekend thinks that the filly, Untappable, might be the best 3-year-old.
Yeah. That was certainly the rumblings around Churchill Downs as well. That Kentucky Oaks performance was as good as you're going to see. One of the fastest runnings in the history of the race, and you know, Rosie did a great job of just putting her in a perfect spot, and she's just Untappable, just so talented and so good. She's by far the best filly in the country. And Steve Asmussen, there is precedence here. He, of course, ran Rachel Alexandra against the boys, so why not? I think he will take a shot against the boys, later on in the season. Maybe it comes at Saratoga. Maybe he does kind of a Rachel thing and takes a shot there. I don't know, but she is, she's ultra talented and undoubtedly one of the top 3-year-olds of any gender in the country.
Yeah, that was a very, very impressive performance on Friday. And again, a 107 Beyer figure for her as compared to a 97 for California Chrome. So we'll see what happens with Untappable in the future. Want to go a little earlier on that Friday card, the Grade 2 Ali Sheba, $300,000 a mile and 16th on the dirt, and the horse that was taking all the attention betting-wise, 3-5, was Will Take Charge. Will Take Charge disappoints and runs 6th. I'd like your take on that. The NBC crew thought maybe it's just too many ship-arounds so far in the 2014 season, and maybe just has taken its toll on Will Take Charge. But as we watch the race, I will say it's the number 1 Moonshine Mullen winning the race over the number 7 Golden Ticket, and I certainly want to touch on Moonshine Mullen getting a little bit of an upset here, paying $15 and change, because it's your man, a guy you have on with you, previewing the stakes every week, and we had him on about midweek last week talking about the Kentucky Oaks card. Ellis Starr on our program gave out Moonshine Mullen, so we'll tip our cap to Ellis for a good call there. But boy, is there a horse that's any hotter right now in that handicap division than Moonshine Mullen?
I don't know. And, getting back to, let's go back to Will Take Charge for just a quick second here, because as you said, maybe it's the shipping, maybe he's, kind of done too much traveling already this year. Only Dwayne Lucas will know exactly what went wrong. But as I said afterwards, we came back on the coverage, and I said, again, we're reminded that these horses are not machines. We tend to think that a horse like Will Take Charge, who has been so consistent, never worse than second since getting absolutely drubbed in all 3 Triple Crown races last year, we tend to think those kind of horses are just going to show up and run the race every time. And let's face it, the Wise Dans of the world are few and far between. So Will Take Charge, just not his day for whatever reason. Wayne Lucas will go back to the drawing board with him, and he'll be fine. I think that we'll see some more good performances from him as we move throughout the year. But Moonshine Mullen, red hot. This is his 4th consecutive win now, and his previous ones have come by open length. He was running for an $80,000 claiming price 2 starts back at Oaklawn. He wins that race. He takes an allowance race the next time out, and here he comes and beats Will Take Charge in the Ali Sheba. And big surprise, Calvin Burrell coming through along the rail to beat this horse here today. Good race.
Yeah, and as I say, he now becomes maybe a nice addition. I think we probably have to see one more, but it could be another nice addition to a fascinating older crop this year. And my takeaway on Will Take Charge, maybe it is, and we'll see what Wayne Lucas does as far as planning for his next race. But I never decide on one race whether a horse is going in the wrong direction or not. They have to string a couple together for me because, as you say, they're not machines, and they can just on any given day throw in one clunker. So we'll see where he goes next and what happens there. Let's talk about another undercard race on Saturday's card, the Humana Distaff. Just want to show this one because Grade 1 event, 300,000 going 7 furlongs for fillies and mares. And boy, you know, it's different now, Mike, than when I started in the game. Horses didn't come back from layoffs like this and win at Grade 1 events the way Midnight Lucky does. Midnight Lucky, 4 career starts coming into this and really showed some nice promise last year as a 3-year-old filly. Ended her season at the end of May winning the Grade 1 Acorn and doing it very easily, but had been off since that May race. So the better part of a year, and we're going to watch the number 8 Midnight Lucky get it done, and get it done pretty easily in the Humana Distaff on Saturday. What are your thoughts here, particularly as I say, coming off of that layoff?
Yeah, I agree. I thought she was a bit vulnerable on Saturday, and this was no field of cupcakes either. She had to face Io Tappa, who, of course, is a big player from the West Coast. She had to face Cutie the Beauty, who a lot of people thought was the new leader in the division. So this was a pretty solid group that she beat, and she did it so easily. And it was great to have Buck Bradley, the trainer of multiple Eclipse champion Groupie Doll, who was by far the leader in this division the last 2 seasons before her retirement. It was great to have Buff as part of our coverage on Saturday afternoon, because the question I had for him after the race was, is Midnight Lucky, even though she only had the 1 start this year, is she now the one to take over for Groupie Doll? Is she the new leader in this division? And he said, well, possibly. He said, but it'll be interesting to see if Bob Baffert stretches her back out, because when you look back at what she did last year before going to the sidelines, you know, she did win at 1 1/16 in taking a race at Sunland Park, and she did it by 8 lengths. She won the Grade 1 Acorn, which is a 1-turn mile at Belmont Park. She did it by 6 1/4 lengths. So she's not just a sprinter. She's not a one-trick pony. She can stretch out, and she can go a bit longer. So we'll see what happens there, and if she stays in this division or tries to tackle some of the big girls maybe in that distaff division.
Yeah, it wouldn't be surprising. Again, she's lately raced and has tried longer distances to some extent successfully, so she's going to be an interesting player now, no question about it. And Mike, before we let you go, we're going to watch the Turf Classic in the next segment. That was won by Wise Dan, but I just wanted to get your thoughts there. The reigning 2-time Horse of the Year comes back in the Turf Classic on Saturday. Doesn't win the way this horse did last year. The NBC broadcast folks thought, maybe the horse is losing a step at this point. I think Charlie Lepresti has indicated that he thinks the horse is maybe doing better than this horse has done. But boy, it certainly was a nail-biter on Saturday. Your thoughts on Wise Dan?
Yeah, well, Charlie had said before his race at Keeneland, his comeback race with the Makers 46, that, you know, maybe he wasn't 110% for that race, and he was able to, you know, to win that day. So you figured he was going to be tighter on Saturday with the second start back of the season. I don't think he's lost a step at all. You know, and you can't measure a horse's heart, and he had every right to get beat in that race on Saturday afternoon. And the Juddmonte horse came to the inside of him, looked him in the eye, and Wise Dan just refused to lose. He dug in again. And I thought it was brilliant. John Velasquez, I think they said this on the NBC coverage, he kind of guided him to the inside a little bit. Not sure if that was by design or if Wise Dan just drifted in, but either way, he found himself right next to the Juddmonte horse, and he could see him, and he could hear him, and he just found another gear and found a way to get it done. And great horses will do that.
Absolutely. All right, Mike, a little lull before the storm when Preakness activity starts up. So, again, we got a week before that all kicks off. What's on for Horse Racing Radio Network over the next week?
That's a great question, Seth. Post-Kentucky Derby, we'll have to see where we go from here. We have, of course, our Wednesday, Thursday, Friday shows from 3 to 7, which you can catch our Trainer Talk on Wednesday night, the Brisnet.com call-in show on Thursday, and our Stakes Preview show on Friday. Of course, we'll have the Equine Forum Saturday morning, and then after that, it is all Preakness. More than likely going to talk with the winning connections of California Chrome. We'll probably do a little something with the connections of Untappable. see if we can't grab an interview there. But we'll wrap up Oaks and Derby and then start looking ahead to the Middle Jewel. And, of course, we'll be on site there for our exclusive coverage starting all Preakness week.
Sounds good. You can catch all that on the Horse Racing Radio Network website. Mike, as always, we appreciate the visit. We'll catch up with you next week.
All right, thanks, Seth.
Mike Penna from the Horse Racing Radio Network. We'll take our next break. When we come back, Teresa Gennaro from the Brooklyn Backstretch blog, Forbes.com, and more right after this.
This is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Casano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Funding your Capital OTB Bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Hey, race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, and amazing Vegas-style atmosphere. The Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Happy to be joined now by Teresa Gennaro, Brooklyn Backstretch blog, Forbes.com, many other places you can find her work. Good morning, Teresa.
Good morning, Seth. How are you?
Very good. And Teresa, you were down in Louisville at Churchill Downs during the days leading up to and including Oaks and Derby Day. So we're getting some impressions from all of our guests over the past couple of days here on TV. And before we talk about some specifics, let's just get some overall impressions of the days leading up and the weekend as well. What was it like weather-wise, atmosphere, and more?
Thursday and Friday were definitely iffy weather-wise. They were pretty chilly. They were mostly cloudy. They were breezy. It was not all that pleasant to be outside. Felt more like fall than early spring. But it was kind of nice to get all of that out of the way because Derby Day itself was absolutely glorious. Sunny, breezy, in the 70s. People could be outside. So even though the crowd was huge, it didn't feel super crowded the way it has in some past years. Could not have asked for a nicer day on Saturday.
And were you there for Thurby, Thurby is the new promotion. According to Churchill Downs, Oaks Day used to be kind of aimed at the locals, the Louisville people. Well, now that's blown up, and there's 100,000 or more there on Friday. So now they've deemed Thursday Thurby Day, which again is supposed to cater to the locals. And were you there? And was it a success?
I was not there for the races that day, but I went over to the backstretch that morning and left the backstretch probably around 10:30, and the crowds to go in were absolutely packed. I mean, there were people lined up. They had their picnics. They were dressed up. It definitely it looked to be working from my eyes at that early point, that there were people trying to take advantage of it by getting there early. Like I said, I didn't stay for the day, but it sure seems from those first impressions that the community has embraced it.
Yeah, good, because it sounded like a good idea. And there should be some catering to the locals, you would think, on the big week, because they're the folks who support it. Yeah, they support it all year long, so they should have something. I'm not quite sure about the name. I'm not sure Thurby's working for me, but who knows?
The first time I heard it, I said, what is it? I don't get it.
Yeah.
So, but maybe that's just me.
Well, no, to tell you the truth, I didn't quite get it. It took me a second to figure it out myself. Also asking all the guests who were live down there, the big screen, they just unveiled it opening night at Churchill Downs. Certainly in the pictures and the videos we see of it, very impressive. But I'm just trying to get the impressions of people who were actually there live in person to that new big screen on the backstretch.
I have to say, when I first, was reading about it in the weeks, the last month or so, I was kind of like, okay, great, fine, a big TV, whatever. Yes, it's huge. Yeah, to be honest, I wasn't sure that it was going to be the big deal that it was portrayed to be, and it was absolutely amazing. You can see it like as you're driving up to the track, so it's this imposing thing as you're going in, and I think it absolutely transformed the experience of being at the races, no matter where you were. At the track, there were people upstairs in the suites watching it. Folks in the infield had kind of, the infield there is not the same as it is at Preakness, where there's a big stage and live music where fans are sort of oriented, and the screen now offers a real serious focus to the folks in the infield. They were gathered in front of that watching it. The picture itself is absolutely stunning. It's a little data poor at the moment. It's kind of tough to get a sense of the way we would traditionally look at the order of horses is different. It's not horizontally down along the bottom. It's vertically alongside on the left, which seems kind of weird. And to be honest, when I saw the numbers on the left at first, I didn't realize that's what they were. You don't have the odds up there. You don't have the sectional times up there. I spoke with somebody from Panasonic while I was down there. I'm working on an article on this for Thoroughbred Racing Commentary that should be up later this week, and they said that the graphics can continue to be customized, and they expect to be working with Churchill Downs to get it up there. So I would like to see a little bit more info on the screen. It was not as clear as we're used to where your horses are, but from a sheer visual standpoint and getting a view of the race, it was absolutely stunning.
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus, and so hats off to Churchill Downs for putting that in, because, again, it was a question mark. I'm like you when they first wrote about it. What's this going to be like, and will it be intrusive? And it seems like it's gone over as a big hit after the first week of racing. All right.
Yeah, it was worth every penny of the $12 million they spent on it.
All right, let's shift our attention to the racing now and touch on a couple of races that maybe had some broader implications and whatnot. Going back to the Oaks on Friday, Untappable wins. And you can comment on Untappable and the performance, certainly, which was very impressive, and we'll watch the stretch run again here. But, of course, Untappable, trained by Steve Asmussen. I'm just wondering, you being there on the ground, the Asmussen story, to me, doing the Equidaily website and going out and searching for headlines, it had play during the week, no question. I don't think it got as much play as I was anticipating. It did get paid attention to, but I think I was anticipating maybe a little bit more. The NBC coverage certainly tuned into it, both Oaks and Derby Day. They covered it, particularly with the interview with Asmussen himself that was replayed both days. But I'm just wondering there on the ground what the buzz was with regard to the Asmussen-PETA New York Times controversy.
The buzz was about the horse. The rest of it was definitely, I felt like in the shadows, it was there, it was background. But I think the fact that there had been this expectation that there was going to be some other breaking news about it in the last week, and the fact that that did not happen for whatever reason, I think took a lot of the steam out of that story. I didn't hear a lot, like you, I didn't read a lot about it. It was there, but it was presented more as background than as a headline story. And I think, really people just focused on how amazing that filly is.
Which is good because, boy, with a horse like that, and I mentioned earlier in the show, Andy Byers' column that came out within the past 24 hours is kind of making the case that maybe she's the best 3-year-old of either sex. And so it's good that that is the concentration, no question about it. And from some of the tweets you sent out, it sounds like you may have been at the post-race press conference, and it sounded like there the concentration was mainly on the filly as well.
It was, and it was interesting. I watched the race from just outside the winner's circle, and just by coincidence, standing right behind me in the winner's circle, leaning on a pole with a television camera in his face, was Steve Asmussen, and I took a picture of him right before the race. And you would be hard pressed to find a man who looked more collected under the pressure that he must have been under, and knowing that there's a camera looking at him right in the face. But he didn't hide. He was there. He was right there in the winner's circle. He was surrounded by people. I was watching the race, so I didn't see his reaction, but he didn't seem to shy away from attention at that point. And in the post-race conference, there were a couple of questions that were asked about it, and he, I think quite smartly and skillfully said, I answered those questions in the interview I did with NBC. And what he said over and over was, I'm just glad that this filly had the chance to come here and show everybody how good she was.
Very good. And yeah, another one that hopefully we'll be able to look for up at Saratoga this year as well.
Well, what he came out yesterday, and folks pointing her toward the acorn or the mother goose. So we may see her on Belmont Day.
Oh, very good. So she'll be in New York potentially, and that Belmont Day is shaping up to be great. And let me ask you about that. You're mainly out at the New York racetracks on the weekend covering New York racing. And is that Belmont Day shaping up to be crazy or what? Particularly, I mean, if we have a Triple Crown on the line, then it's nuts. But how about that Ogden Phipps on the undercard?
And I heard a couple of people say, and I think if you look at Saturday's card, obviously there were a lot of great races. But overall, it seemed like that maybe the Churchill Stakes races came up a little light. And I did hear some people musing on the fact that perhaps people are saving their horses for that day. I mean, that's speculation, it's impression, it's not fact. But it certainly seems like that day has an awful lot of buzz, and there are a lot of horsemen and fans who are looking forward to it. And I was told yesterday by David Brenning, who had a copy of yesterday's.
Oh, I think we lost Teresa. We will attempt to get her back. I think we had her on a cell phone, but they'll dial her up and see if they can get in with Teresa. In the meantime, I will hit on another news story that I didn't get to in the earlier segment, and it's just I think it was the Lexington. It was the Lexington Herald Leader had a little follow up on trainer Art Sherman, California Chrome's trainer, obviously. He used to be a jockey and said, I rode at Bowie in 1959. That was the last time I was there. He's never been to Pimlico. So Art Sherman will be a newbie at Pimlico chasing the Triple Crown. We have Teresa back now. Teresa, again, continue at Dave Grenig article.
Dave Grenig said that he was looking at the Courier-Journal yesterday in Louisville before his plane took off, and that NYRA took out a full-page ad touting Belmont Stakes Day, encouraging people to come, and talking about the rejuvenated Belmont Park. We did not see similar ads in the New York papers, although it's entirely possible that we missed them, but they're clearly doing full court press to the folks who were there yesterday, trying to get them to come up.
Well, absolutely, and you're there in the airport, you got the newspaper while you're sitting in the waiting room, and you're in the perfect spot to be thinking, oh, well, maybe Belmont Day. Yeah, no question about it. All right, I want to touch on another race from Derby Day. Earlier on the card, the Woodford Reserve. We talked a little bit about it earlier with Mike Penna, but we didn't watch the race. Going to watch the stretch drive here as Wiesdan. Boy, how impressive. He just will not. Looks like Seek again is going to go right by, but Wiesdan just won't let the horse go by. Now, it wasn't as impressive as he won this race last year, and the NBC commentary was kind of, maybe he's lost a step. But I think Charlie Lopresti is thinking this horse is as good or better than he ever has been. Question mark now is what's next, and again, we may see him at Saratoga because Charlie Lopresti is kind of intimating that the 4-Star Dave will again be next for him, although the Foster is a possibility. But I was reading some things you wrote over the weekend, and I'm always curious about this. 160,000 people at Churchill, I'm very curious how the response is. But up at Saratoga, the fans are so savvy, and after races with big performances like this, you always feel you're proud of being a fan at the track with the reception horses get coming back to the winner's circle and whatnot. And it sounded like Saturday at Churchill Downs, despite the fact that a lot of people were probably either first-timers or occasional racing fans. It sounds like Wise Dan, the two-time Horse of the Year, got an appropriate reception.
It was maybe the best moment of the whole weekend. I mean, first, again, I was down there watching the race from the track, surrounded by, a lot of savvy, perhaps dated horse racing fans and media, and we were all just holding our breath during that stretch duel. I mean, it was absolutely breathtaking to watch what he did, and as you said, just simply refused to lose. There were a couple of times where I really thought he was going to get beat, but he just dug in and came back, and the crowd roared when it was over. And then as he came back, just got this incredible response. I mean, the affection that rolled out of the stands toward him at that moment. I don't know if the folks in the infield were paying that much attention, but the folks in the stands definitely showed that they knew that they had seen something special there and in that horse more generally. I mean, it's just remarkable, and it's just kind of such a shame that nobody outside of horse racing really knows who he is. I mean, if you pay attention to the track, you know who he is and you can appreciate him, but it's just nuts that the larger media haven't picked up on what he's done over the last few years.
Yeah, but it is great to hear that the racing fans gave him that kind of respect, because, again, at the racetrack, I always feel great when that happens, and that shows how important it is when these horses come back. Yeah, they don't change the game. They don't, the attendance doesn't spike up 15% next year because Wise Dan came back. But I think it is important to the game when these horses come back like this and give folks an opportunity to stand up and cheer. And as you say, it's always it's really a good feeling to see that kind of thing. Now, as you know, we do have to maybe meld the mainstream media into this a little more. I'm not quite sure how to do that, but it would be great. And with a horse like this, it's absolutely worthwhile. And maybe the Art Sherman story in California Chrome will play into that a little bit too, as now we move on to the second rung. And if he gets that, maybe with a Triple Crown, the mainstream media, Triple Crown on the line, the mainstream media will jump on board. And speaking of the Derby, only got about a minute left, but I wanted to get your thoughts overall on the